Hello, everybody, welcome back. We need more than this
Did you
episode.
check the internet? The girl who beat Endeavor's kid is quirkless. What the fuck? Why would you wait? Let one of those freaks into their school. Have their standards really dropped that much? It's not just her, though. Some news outlets reported there are 3 quirkless students at UA this year. Geez, why would All Might just let this happen? Isn't he supposed to be the all-powerful symbol of peace? 10th Daddy, the news says the girl who beat Endeavor's son is quirkless like me. If she can beat him, then does that mean I can be a hero? Yes, it absolutely does. See, sweetie, she proved you're not useless like people said you were. 10 Shuichi Agachi watched the news with great interest. The girl who had beat Endeavor's son is quirkless. From what he knew, quirkless were at times treated worse than mutants like him, their much higher rate of suicide being the reason you don't see many of them around. The girl was likely to become a symbol, whether she knew it or not. 10th, and now for our first match of the quarterfinals. It's Japan's rising star, Deku vs Ainami. Seriously, is she allowed to use that name? We're not going to get sued. She's not getting paid for it, so it's fine. Something was wrong. The crowd seemed upset when Yuzumaro-san walked out onto the stage. Midnight seemed on edge, as if she felt she had to jump in at any moment. And then Nizuku heard it. Quirkless freak. Someone had hurled something out from the crowd. Izuku and Midnight having no time to react as a fist-sized stone struck Yuzumaro in the temple. The girl all but clashed Izuku. And then everything went silent as All Might suddenly slammed down in the middle of the ring, dripping wet with some seaweed hanging off. Of course, that little fact went completely unnoticed when the crowd was frightened into. In fact, he looked downright furious as he grabbed the microphone. Who threw that? He demanded, his voice low and foreshadowing retribution. When the crowd remained silent, he continued, "Are you a pro?" He demanded, looking toward the heroes section of the crowd, where the rock had come from. Doesn't matter. Whether you're pro or psychic, you need to turn in your license and burn your suit because you have no right to call yourself a hero after attacking a child. He addressed the rest of the crowd. You people should be ashamed of yourselves. So what if she doesn't have a quirk? She's just as human as the rest of you? The crowd shuddered under All Might's glare. Someone just brought to my attention that my presence as an all-powerful hero may have caused more harm than good, that my existence has created a toxic society that values only strong, flashy quirks and beats down those who don't fit that mold. After what I just witnessed, I'm afraid I have to agree with her. I would have thought the existence of quirks would cause this country to lighten up on its conformist values, but it seems it's only doubled down and become worse. I am truly disgusted to see just how low this country has fallen. We are supposed to be better for the sake of the new generation. It's past time for this country to undergo some serious change. Otherwise, its pride and arrogance will be its downfall. He handed the microphone to Midnight as he went to check on AI. Young lady, can you hear me? How many fingers am I holding up? Strawberry. Damn it, she's out of it. Midoriya, don't move her. You might worsen her head injury. Just stay with her, okay? The medical bots are on their way. 10th Bakugo scoffed as he watched the scene below. So she was quirkless then. Freak deserved it for thinking she could walk amongst the big wigs. At least she wasn't hiding a quirk like Deku. To hell with what the damn therapy mutt was saying. You can't just manifest a quirk after a decade. Do you think she'll be okay? The thief extra suddenly spoke up. Are you actually worried about someone outside of 1B Monomos? The orange-haired extra asked in surprise. I have faced my fair share of discrimination for my quirk Kendo. Thief extra spoke, offended she thought so lowly of him. Those who understand are no enemy of mine. Then why do you keep giving Midoriya shit? Didn't All Might say he was a late bloomer? That's different. He has a quirk now. And besides, someone has to make sure he doesn't let his power and position go to his head. So you're saying you're trying to keep Midoriya from becoming arrogant by being an asshole to him. And what about the rest of Class 1A? They're already arrogant. What is wrong with you, Monoma? 10th, the ground beneath Anako cracked as she dug her fingers into the concrete. How dare those so-called heroes attack one of her close friends? She replayed the footage, working to find out who threw that rock. 10th Momo watched as Achako and Sithila left the box with a distressed AA, trying to calm her down as they went to the infirmary. The rest of her classmates were too stunned by what just happened. She took a deep breath. She was vice representative. She had a duty to perform. She stood to address her classmates. 10th Hut. Tamura said as he looked at the information online. It's weird that Lucen's twin sister has the same name as her. Were she alive, Hana Shamir would have likely had an aneurysm from the sheer stupidity of that statement. As it stood, though, she just wondered if her brother had gotten brain damage from his fight with Midoriya. 10th, what's wrong? Shoto asked as Hound Dog growled at his phone. Someone doxed Uzumaru online, and she was attacked by the crowd. Shoto blinked as he processed that information. What's 10th? I assure you, Hiroto-san and I have already narrowed down the list of suspects, and I assure you they'll be hit with the consequences of their actions full force. Neji spoke. He had been on the phone with Uzumaru's head caretaker, and frankly, he was just as furious as her, if not more so. He had managed to trace the source of the doxing to the HPSC main headquarters, so the president wanted a war. Neji would deliver full force and more. Toshinori coughed up a handful of blood as he reverted to his skeleton form, stumbling off of the stage. The salt water was irritating his injury, but that wasn't his focus right now. While he wanted to speak to Nezu as soon as possible, they unfortunately couldn't just cancel the sports festival midway through without good reason, and knowing the HPSC, they would not entertain the idea of a quirkless girl being assaulted as a good reason. He instead sent a text to Nezu asking for a meeting to be held later. It scared him to think that the Uri he knew could have turned out like the other Uri had things gone differently. Chapter 51. The first thing Shoto saw as he entered the infirmary was Midoriya, Uraraka, and two other girls sitting by the unconscious Uzumaru's bedside. He felt uneasy at the sight of someone laying in a hospital bed. Midoriya, can I speak to you alone for a second? Izuku sighed as he stood and followed Shoto into the hallway. Yes, Todoroki. I'm sorry. Seeing her in that hospital bed reminded me of my brother. How my brother Natsuo, he's in a coma. After All Might announced you as his apprentice, my father got worse. He doubled down on my training. It was horrible. Eventually, my brother Natsuo got fed up and lashed out at him. An untrained young man against the number 2 hero. He didn't stand a chance. My father went overboard. The worst part is, he has the gall to act like he's concerned about Natsuo. It doesn't help that Fayumi's in denial about everything. He sighed. I'm sorry, okay. I know I've been acting horribly to everyone, and I shouldn't have pointed out Yaoyorozu's weaknesses. One thing at a time, I guess. Izuku mentally sighed. He saw Ryuzen leave the infirmary and start making her way to the stadium. Of course, the HPSC wouldn't let the sports festival be canceled just because a quirkless child was attacked. He turned to Todoroki. Todoroki, if you're really sorry, then work to prove it. I get that you've been through a lot, but that's no excuse to lash out against other people. Todoroki nodded, turning to leave. As he reached the end of the hall, he paused. Before I go, there's something I've been meaning to ask you. It's not really related to what we just discussed, but it's something I've... Yes, Todoroki. Izuku didn't know whether to be baffled or impressed at the complete whiplash of a question. He just chalked it up to Todoroki being socially inept. 10th Ryu-san was holding back. Shoji had managed to land a few hits on her. She suddenly stopped. I forfeit. Both Shoji and Midnight. Is there? Midnight asked. I'm tired. I want to sleep. He tired. Midnight blanched. I thrive in the wet. I am currently not in the wet, therefore I get tired more easily. She turned and patted. Shoji couldn't help but wonder if she worded it like that on purpose. Oh, come on. What was that? It was people came here to watch. Why, Grandma Chio is busy, so she asked me to take over for a bit. 10th Momo stood across from Managi. From what she had seen, her quirk allowed her to telekinetically control small objects. She would have to plan them carefully. Midnight started the match, and Momo immediately created several bombs that she hurled at Yanagi, who immediately perfect. As Yanagi drew the bombs in close, Momo pressed the button on and on. The bombs exploded, and Yanagi was almost immediately encased in a quickly hardening foam. Capture foam, Momo explained. Once exposed to air, it immediately hardens into a concrete-like substance. Midnight called the match in Momo's favor. Momo immediately created a solvent to help Anagi out. Vlad nearly had an aneurysm. Tenso, a girl with a gravity-removing quirk against a Mandy's boy who could make swords pop out of his body. At least Midnight warned Kamakiri that she would disqualify him if he went too far. The match started, and the two lunged forward. Izuku had taught her some hand-to-hand techniques, but good God, this boy was relentless. He had a kind of bloodlust in his eyes that Ochako did not like. It was only a matter of time before he got carried away. Jack Mantis, calm down before you. One of his blades pierced Ochako's side. Everyone froze. Kamakiri got a concerned look on his face when he realized what had happened. Jack Mantis is disqualified for excessive violence. 10th, as it turned out, despite the wound being shallow, Ochako had just gotten very lucky. Another inch or so to the side and the blade would have cut her iliac artery. Kamakiri spent at least 10 minutes, and Ochako had just barely been cleared to participate. As she watched the screen while a concerned AI and Izuku hovered over her, she wondered if the semifinals would be where things got in. 10th, Momoye Arazu, Ochako Yoro, Nizo Shoji. Everything hurt, and at least one of those quirks had stunted her regeneration quirks. Ranri pushed herself up, holding her bleeding side as that abomination floated. She had to keep fighting. For Izuku's sake, even if it killed, Ranri turned fitfully in her slip chapter. Izuku sighed as he walked out to the ring. Momo was someone he respected, and he didn't want to go overboard. 1% should do. He and Momo took their places across. Ready, begin. The two representatives of one lunged at each other. In an instant, Momo had created a metal rod that Izuku had. Aim for the ribs. Come on. Punch a punch. Nejire, I don't think he can concentrate with you practically yelling in his ear. Oops, sorry. Izuku jabbed Momo in the ribs, sending her stumbling back. Wait, what's going on? Is Deku holding back? Mike complained. He's choosing to fight Krady on equal footing out of respect, Aizawa mused. Oh, come on. That's no fun. What's the point of a fight if you're not going to go all out and bash your opponent's face in? I mean, Eri, where did you get that bet? No, don't you DOHGOD my shins! Exclamation. Momo created a taser and jabbed. He grunted, grabbing her wrist and flipping her over his shoulder, knocking the wind out of her. When he turned, she created a flash grenade, which immediately made danger sense flared, but he was so disoriented that he didn't realize. He shot out a small strand of black whips. Izuku grabbed her and threw her to side. Momo hit the ground rolling, stopping dangerously close to the boundary of the arena. She created a capture foam grenade, hurling it at Izuku, who narrowly leapt out of the way, rushing up to her, only for a net to explode from her skin, landing on it. His muscles seized as an electric current ran, Froppy style. A tendril of black whip shot from his mouth, nailing Momo in the gut and sending her stumbling back, her foot landing on the other side of the boundary line. Krady is out of bounds. Midnight announced. Deku wins. Izuku managed to force the electrified net off of his body, stumbling up to Momo. He held out his hand with a smile. That was fun, he said. After a second, Momo smiled and shook his hand. 10th, in a small, out-of-the-way country town, a little girl watched as the octopus boy who had once saved her from drowning took his place in the ring. She was glad he was doing good now. 10th, Ochako and Shoji stood across from each other. Begin, Midnight called. Shoji extended his arms toward the gravity girl, who dodged as she rushed over to Shoji. The large boy brought his knee up. Ochako suddenly keeled over and, Uraraka, are you okay? Shoji asked in worry. First, I think you reopened my stab wound. Ochako, yeet, she shouted. Tentacole is out of bounds, Midnight called. Sorry. Ochako apologized. Shoji sighed. Oh, Shoji held out his hand. No hard feelings. The two shook hands. Now would you look at that sportsmanship, my cult? Tentacole has every right to be angry after the deception, but he chooses to let it go and praise his opponent's cleverness. Why can't more people in general be this civil? Tenso, we're facing each other now. Izuku mused as he and Ochako stood outside their prep rooms. Izuku, I love you, but I'm only going to say this once. If you go easy on me, I'll let Eri doodle in your analysis notebooks. Izuku clammed up. But if I go too hard, the match will be over too fast. Well, you worked it out pretty good when you were fighting Momo. Achako teased, let's get ready. 10th finals match : Izuku Midoriya vs. Achako Uraraka. Yumruta sighed as she walked the halls of the clinic to get something from her room. Today had been hectic. First, Dr. Konami had brought in a boy who apparently had a bad history with Ameko. It ended as poorly as you might expect. Second, they had the sports festival on in the common area, and the very last thing Yum had expected to see was her daughter in the commentator's booth. At least she could take solace in the fact that Eri seemed happy. She opened her door. There was a little girl in her room. The very last thing Yumruta expected was to be seated on her bed comforting what was apparently an alternate universe variant of her daughter. I'm sorry. Ronri sobbed. I know the other me hurt a lot of people, and that hurting people, what do you mean the other you meant? When I first started hurting people, I felt really guilty about it, especially Kakinai. I know the other hymns were bad, but the one I knew was really nice to me. I didn't want to be hurt by all the guilt, so I split my mind in half. I have all of Uri's compassion, her ability to love and feel guilt for all the bad things I did. I'm essentially Uri's conscience. The other me has none of that anymore. She's stronger than me, but she isn't mean to me at all. She likes to talk to me and play, but she's sleeping now inside the vestige realm. She got sick after All Might apologized, so I'm the one in control of our body right now. I'm basically a split. That was a lot. And first a monster. No, sweetie. Even if she was from another universe, this was still her daughter. A monster would be completely incapable of regretting their actions. Even if what the other you does is horrible and unforgivable, you were a part of her once, which means that your regret is technically hers. Yum smiled. It hurts, and my hurt is hers too. She just doesn't want to admit it. Then, Yum said, maybe you should take this chance. 10th, and we're back, Mike announced. We're finally at the final. 2 students competing to be. Let's hope they give a spectacular. Wap-ha! Sorry, Eri. I put on Wap OHGOD my deck VS. Uravity, as always, spoke bluntly, already done with this shit. How can someone so adorable be so terrified? Izuku stood across from Machako, wondering what he did to. Ready, midnight began. Begin? 10th AI stared at the screen in confusion. AI, why did I just wake up to Midoriya suplexing Uraraka? 10th, now that he thought about it, teaching his girlfriend some hand-to-hand may have been a bad idea in the long. So who do you think I should take for my internship after this? In the previous timeline, you went with Gunhead since you wanted to expand your combat repertoire, Izuku replied as he headbutted her in the face. The problem with most rescue heroes is that they're not well trained for actual combat, which becomes detrimental when they're forced into a fight with villains. Achako nodded, wiping blood from her nose before letting loose a roundhouse kick to Izuku's side. So an experienced close-range fighter. Gotcha. Izuku dove in and punched her in the gut, whining her. 10th, what is this? Those 2 wanna clowns are showing off. Monoma raged. As if they couldn't have humiliated 1B enough with my blatantly unfair match against Midoriya now. He was promptly silenced. After all, it's pretty hard to talk when you've been turned into a human popsicle. You're annoying. Shut up, Todoroki said. X. So, who are you going to intern with? Achako asked as Izuku had her in an arm lock. Not entirely sure. Izuku mused. Gran Torino doesn't really have much else to teach me now. I'm sure someone will come up. You're like the golden boy of heroics right now. Midnight knelt down. Uraraka, can you get out? Not without breaking my arm. And I've already broken this arm twice. At this point, I'll probably just forfeit. Midnight nodded, standing up. Uravity has forfeited the match. The winner of the first year's sports festival is Deku. 10th is Uyukulu. I'm so proud of you, baby X. Inko wailed as the house custom. 10th, all right, I think I'm better now, Mike groaned. Not quite as spectacular as I'd hoped, but at least it's over. Down below, students had gathered onto the podium to receive their medals, and now to hand out the medals. The crowd went wild as Mirko stepped out with the medals, having arrived late due to an incident with Hawks appearing in her hotel room. Before Midnight could say anything else, though, Astran, I have something to say. That's right. The quirkless girl you guys attacked. Izuku's face was the epitome of tranquility. You people treated her as less than human for something she couldn't control. There was silence, then Midnight cleared her throat. Midoriya, I understand your reasoning. I have to what? Izuku asked. What are you going to do? So he was kind of sore about Kakin being chained up in the original timeline. He still had no idea how Yui got away with that. At least it got Midnight to quiet. Anyone who agrees with me can feel free to join me, Izuku said as he walked out of the stadium to the. After a few seconds, how Yui seems to be raising their kids right. Mirko smirked before dropping the remaining medals in the ground and stomping them into scrap. These kids, one could very much hear the pride. Principal Nedzu, Sir Nedzu's assistant, spoke through the intercom. The commission president is on the phone. Is that so? Nedzu mused. Then he reached over and put the president on hold. Such petness was always the most fun. 10th, hey kiddo. AI jumped with a squeak as his Mirko barged into the infirmary. They told me you were here. Didn't really get a chance to talk to you last time since you were kinda out of it. So you're the quirkless girl from the museum fire, huh? You've gotten big. So how are you? There was silence as AI stared at Mirko in disbelief. You really remember me? Mirko blinked. Well, yeah. You were like my debut as a pro hero kid. I always wondered what happened to you. I've been discriminated against myself, you know. People didn't think my quirk would be well suited for heroics. I had to work my ass off to get where I am. Then she smirked. Hey, speaking of discrimination. 10th, a few minutes later, a pair of pictures appeared on Mirko's social media account. The first was a newspaper clipping of Mirko's debut with her holding a younger AI. The second was a present-day Mirko with her arm around AI's shoulder, giving off her signature smirk, while AI shyly covered her face with, Bunny Bitch Official, check out who I ran into. Cubs all grown up. Anyone who tries to fuck with her will have to answer to me. That's 42,749 likes. 10th, well, now we finally got that out of the way. Nedzu sighed as he sat in his chair. Sitting around the table were Tashinori, Aizawa, Gran Torino, and Night Eye. We've got about a day before the internship requests for first years start coming in. I'm personally curious to see the numbers this year. But for now, what is this meeting about All Might? You said it was urgent. Does it have anything to do with your grand entrance earlier? It does. Tashinori sighed. Do any of you believe in the existence of the multiverse? He'll be receiving a weakened version of my quirk. I'll consider it. Karaki nodded. In that case, my lord, he should be ready around the time thy expo rolls around to give a rough estimate. Definitely sometime during summer. Good, very good. Oh, and doctor, don't tell Tamura. You know he'll just throw a fit. Of course, my lord. Garaki turned to his computer. And with that, Project 9 is a go.
Okay, so see me that limitation on my own liking. Have you watched this episode? Mm. Damn it. Fuck. Maybe we just want to actually stop remembering things. Or, no. Actually, they didn't do it. Updated, let's see. It updated today, actually. What the hell? Oh.
You mean to tell me, Aizawa began, that an alternate universe variant of Eri showed up, got angry when you inadvertently provoked her, kicked your ass, then had a mental breakdown and disappeared after you apologized for all the suffering one of your own variants had caused her? Well, when you put it like that, I sound senile. Toshinori responded. How fascinating. Neji spoke up. There had always been theories to the existence of a multiverse, but for actual living proof to suddenly show up and rewarped by a completely different life to ours, and not only has all for one's quirk, but enough power to beat even the symbol of peace with relative ease. Toshinori nodded. I was only able to land one meaningful hit on her, and all that did is knock her bonnet off. So what do we do? Night Eye asked. We wait. Neji responded. For the moment it seems as if she's keeping her distance and only engaged All Might after he provoked her. So for now, let's see what she does. Nedzu, there was an incident involving Sukachi when he and his squad went to retrieve that Namu. Night Eye spoke up. Every member of that squad, save for Tsukachi himself, were completely massacred. When questioned, Tsukachi said that the Namu attacked them on sight, but Midoriya said the Namu should have gone docile without Shigaraki to command it. On top of that, reports showed that all of the quirks the Namu should have had are missing. I don't think all for one would go through the trouble of making an anti-symbol of peace only to take its quirks and leave it in the middle of nowhere. So you think the other Uri may have been the cause? Interesting. She must have a quirk to manipulate people's memory. It's quite possible she may have been provoked then. Neju hummed. Next time she shows up, I want to try and speak to her peacefully. The last thing we need is to make an enemy of her. All Might, is there anything of note regarding this other you think we should know? Well, Tashinori thought. When she told me about the damage to society that my presence had caused, she seemed more concerned about its effects on young Midoriya than she did herself. In fact, everything she did seemed to revolve around him in some way. Great, Aizawa huffed. So we have some psycho yander with the power to atomize a city on our hands. If we can use her apparent obsession with Midoriya to our advantage, we may be able to turn her into an ally. Neji mused. Very well, you're all dismissed. Wait, shouldn't we inform Midoriya of this? Night Eye asked. Neji sighed. To be honest, I'm not quite sure. I don't want to take any risk that we might provoke this other Uri. For now, let's wait and see what she does before Midoriya gets involved. Besides, now is probably not the time to concern him with these matters, considering UA has internships coming up. Speaking of, Torino-san, have you received the paperwork? Yeah. Torino waved him off. I got it, don't worry. I'll give that damn Pomeranian an attitude adjustment. 10th a few days later, Listen up, you chocolate fucks. Aizawa spoke up as he walked into the classroom dragging a cart of papers. Now that the sports festival's over, we're shifting focus to internships. He pulled out a remote. The internships will last a week, and depending on how you performed, Pro Heroes would have sent in requests for you to join them. He pressed a button and numbers flashed on the screen. Izuku Midoriya, 5,752. Achako Yorako, 3,824. Momoye Uraza, 1,480. Mizu Shoji, 246. Kuroyum, 148. Tetsu, 52. Tenaeda, 29. Hitoshi Shinso, 5. Even if you didn't receive a request, you'll still be doing internships. UA has partnered with 40 different hero agencies across the country. You'll be given a list to choose from. I implore you to choose the agency you think will benefit you best in your training. Lots of third years around here still regret their choices. One more thing. During internships, students will not be allowed within the Hasu City ward of Tokyo. There have been reports that the hero killer Stain has been sighted within Hasu, and we have reason to believe he is not above targeting hero students. Class dismissed. Midoriya Takoyami, come see me after school today. There's something I need to discuss with you too. 10th man, you didn't get nearly as many as Yaemomo, despite placing third like her. Kaminari commented as he looked at Shoji's results. Why is that? Mutant discrimination. Shoji answers simply as he packed his things. OH crap. Dude, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. No, it's fine. I'm not bitter about it. If anything, I still got more than I expected, Shoji responded. Achako walked up to him, so I narrowed down some good hand-to-hand fighters. What do you think? I was gonna go with Gunhead, but Izuku looked at the paper, then blinked. Wait, you got a request from Mirko? Oh, yeah. Honestly, Mirko is one of the best melee fighters in the country, second only to All Might. And she's never done internships before. You'll be her first real student. Though I gotta warn you, she's a little intense. Achako nodded. If she's the best, then that's what I'll go for. Izuku nodded, before looking up to see Ada with a grimace. Something wrong, Ada? It's nothing. I had just been hoping to intern at my brother's agency in Hasu. Don't you think Ingenium would want you to branch out a bit? After all, relying too heavily on a set style could be detrimental as a pro. Ada nodded, chopping his hand. You are absolutely right. Thank you, Midoriya. Tenfa, sensei. Aizawa sighed. What do you want, Hagakure? Well, I was wondering. Do you take interns? Aizawa blinked. That was not what he was expecting. What, it's just. My quirk is best suited for stealth, so I'll probably be going underground when I graduate, and Midoriya says you're one of the top underground heroes. I'm trying to be better, really, so. Aizawa held up a hand. Fine. Thank you, sensei, Hagakure said as she left the room. After a few minutes, you asked for a sensei. Takoyami asked, is something wrong? Depends on your perspective. Aizawa sighed, pulling out a couple of papers. You both have received internship requests from outside the country. Haizuku asked. We can get requests from outside Japan. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. The reason I'm telling you is that should you decide to go with them, you'll need to let me know as soon as possible so your schedules can be adjusted accordingly. It's not possible to work under agencies outside of the country during work studies, so you won't get this opportunity again. Think it over carefully. Izuku, who is Ninetales? I am unfamiliar with that hero, Takoyami asked. Oh, I know her, Izuku spoke up. She's the United Kingdom's #1 hero, a Japanese-born hero who created her own agency at only 20 years old, only to suddenly move her agency to London when she was 22, though nobody knows why. It happened pretty suddenly. Once there, she shot up in the rankings since the hero rankings in the UK don't focus as much on popularity. At only 25 years old, she's the youngest #1 hero in the world. Her quirk, Phantom Limbs, lets her create up to 9 shadowy arms that she can manipulate and control, a bit similar to Dark Shadow actually. I did work with Ninetales once before she moved her agency out of the country. Aizawa mused. Really, what was she like? Takoyami asked. Terrifyingly competent. Aizawa answered with a shudder. You're likely to learn a lot from her. I see. Then I might just take up her request. Takoyami mused. Izuku looked at his paper. Star and Stripe. STRSP. Washington. Here, Bakugo. Vlad said as he handed Bakugo a slip of paper. This is the hero Nezu says you'll be interning with. Bakugo looked at the paper with a sneer. Who the fuck was this no-name Gran Torino? You Obami. Nezu mused as he looked over the paper Momo had just handed to Aizawa. Interesting choice. You may very well be the last student at UA to intern with her before we cancel her internship contract. Several reasons actually, Nezu said in a chipper tone. We've been receiving quite a few complaints from students about how Obami only seems interested in using them for free labor rather than actually teaching anything, despite multiple warnings. In fact, I do believe she has a commercial shoot scheduled around this time. It's quite possible she only sent you the request so she can have you in it. Neji cackled. Oh, and then there's the complaints from some parents about their children suddenly developing eating disorders after interning with Obami. Momo, Neji, Aizawa, Tent Midoriya. Momo practically shouted as she threw open Uri's door. I need your... Of all the things she expected when she went into Uri's room, it was not Midoriya sitting in a chair much too small for him wearing a dress with his hair in tea party. Izuku said, want to join, or some other time, perhaps. I was wondering if you could help me pick out an internship. All right, sure, let me see what you have on offer. The next few minutes were Izuku looking over the paper while sipping tea and eating store-bought cookies, all while Uri continued to serve her stuffed animals. Oh, here, Izuku said suddenly. You got a request from Fat Gum. He's got a fat-based stockpiling quirk just like you, so he can help you out with the most effective diets. Momo nodded. Thank you for your assistance. Oh, and say hi, Ama. Jiki. He's a third year who does work studies with Fat Gum. Pretty shy, but he's a nice guy. Tenso, the big bad hero killer, has an assistant now. Shigaraki scratched at his neck in agitation. Rika Hyota sat nearby, gnawing on a turkey leg. How annoying. Tell her to get off of the rafters. You dragged us all the way from Hasu for some big opportunity. Stain sneered, looking down at Shigaraki. Either tell me what you want, or quit wasting my time. ECH. Shigaraki narrowed his eyes. Fine, I want. Is that so? Stain growled. After all, we both want to change this disgusting society, don't. For a moment, I desire to purge this society. For now, I just want to destroy everything I hate, especially Stain, this brat. Stain narrowed his eyes at All Might's precious little apprentice. I want him on his hands and knees begging for me to spare him while I ag. Shigaraki roared in pain as a thin white thread lashed through the air, severing the arm holding Izuku's picture at the elbow. Tense somewhere out there, beneath the pale moonlight, Ronri twitched as she tried putting a tiny Russian casket cap on a mouse. For some reason, she felt like Hantan just lost his hand. Again, 10th Hanako leapt down. Rika lunged at her. Hanako punched her into the ground, knocking her unconscious. It would seem she doesn't like you. Stain mused as Shigaraki writhed on the ground and frankly, I don't like you either. You have no convictions beyond a need for senseless destruction. You're a child, unfit to lead. Come, we can purge some false heroes on the 10th day before internships. Izuku and Takoyami were in the living room with their bags, having to leave early due to their internships being outside the country. Hey, you be a good girl, okay? Izuku said as he patted his head. AI is going to be staying here in the dorm with you while we're all gone, okay? Okay, Nai-chan, Yuri said, hugging him. He stood up to address his girlfriend. You good? Izuku asked. AI nodded. He kissed her while Shizaki watched them intensely. He turned on Chako. Mirko's pretty intense, so be ready. And make sure you have your guard up whenever you're around her. She's the kind of person to jump at the chance to fight someone at any opportunity. Achako nodded. Got it, she said, kissing him. Meanwhile, Kanoko walked up to Takoyami. Hey, Takoyami, good luck, she said. Oh, well, thank you, Komori-san. Your good fortune will keep me bound to eternal darkness. Let's go. Aizawa huffed as he walked in. Izuku and Takoyami followed him while waving goodbye to their classmate. Izuku yawned as he stepped out of the plane, looking around the airport as crowds of people walked around him. He was exhausted. Jet lag was a bitch. There you are, Izuku yelped as a large hand clapped him in the back. Star laughed heartily as she walked into Izuku's view wearing casual clothes. Good to finally meet you, Midoriya. Oh, good to meet you too, Izuku said with a bow. Thank you for having me, Star-sensei. Now, none of that. Star waved him off. When we're off the clock, just call me Kathleen or even Kathy. Of course, Kathleen-sensei. We'll work on it. Now, first things first. How's your English? Oh, pretty good. My dad works around the world, so he helped me with some languages. I also took to learning English so I could watch All Might's old American interviews. Kathleen laughed. I knew there was something I liked about you. Tent Takoyami. Takoyami blinked as a young woman walked over to him. She had tan skin and short, dark brown hair and a bob cut that curved forward at her jaw. She had yellow, cat-like eyes, fangs, clawed hands, and a cat-like tail waving around behind her. On top of her head were a pair of cat ears that twitched at every little noise. She had a dull, nearly emotionless look to her. Yes, Takoyami. My name is Din. I'm the head psychic at Ninetales Agency. I'm essentially her second in command. Oh yes, hello there. Come on then. They motioned him to follow, which he did reluctantly. She had sent a psychic to retrieve him. That naturally had Takoyami worried. The drive to Ninetales Agency was kind of awkward, considering Din didn't seem one for conversation. Finally, they came up to a small, 4-story building, smaller than I expected. Takoyami mused. Din made a noise of affirmation. The UK doesn't focus as much on being flashy as Japan does when it comes to heroes. It's okay to meet and greet fans and stuff like that, but here it's showing off during villain attacks and stuff like that is frowned upon and can actually get you in big trouble. The UK takes this stuff seriously. Keep that in mind while you're here. Of course, Takoyami followed Din inside and past the reception, where they came to an elevator. We're going up to the 4th floor. Those are living quarters and break area. Once you get settled, and we'll go from there. Just for your information, 3rd and 2nd floors are offices. 1st floor is reception and mail room. Basement levels are training areas. The elevator doors opened and Takoyami was hit by a wonderful smell. Then led him past some sidekicks and into a kitchen where a young woman with long red hair was currently cooking. This is Ninetales. Din explained, stepping forward and speaking up. I brought Takoyami. Oh yes, hello. Ninetales spoke up, glancing back at him. She had deep purple eyes with a bit of red mixed in. Please call me Ono when we're not on the clock. Yes. Thank you for having me, Ono-sensei. Takoyami bowed. I apologize for not coming to get you myself. I just figured we could have a nice meal to celebrate you coming here. Oh, that is kind of you, Takoyami said in surprise. Oh, yes, this is Dark Shadow, he said as his shadowy familiar popped out. Ah, yes, Do you have any preferred pronouns, Dark Shadow? Ninetales asked. Dark Shadow blinked as surprised. She slash her. Ninetales nodded. I'll be sure to let the others know. Then can you show Takoyami to his room? We can introduce him to the other sidekicks over lunch after he gets settled in. Din made a noise of affirmation as she guided him to his room. Perhaps this wouldn't be as bad as he thought. Stain sneered as he stalked his latest victim. They were about a day out from returning to Hasu, and he had sent the Spider Girl to get some food as he searched for fakes. His current target was Goop, a heroine whose body was made entirely of slime, save for her core. She could take on a wide variety of shapes for combat and even fire out her slime for ranged attacks. This one would be tough since he wasn't sure if consuming her slime would work with Blood Curdle. Add on to that, Goop, a girl from UA, who could secrete the acid girl was an absolute joke, bouncing energy and her quirk, a deadly one. He wouldn't kill the acid girl. I'm going to be honest. I don't like you. Excuse me. Monoman, you're arrogant. Best Genus. Frankly, your behavior during the sports festival was unacceptable. It's one thing to be competitive, but you were actively antagonizing Class 1, and that's somehow my fault. If anything, Class 1 are the arrogant ones. I was merely trying to remind them of their place. Genus, let me guess you only went with me so you could rub it in Class 1A's face, right? I am 10. Bakugo stared in dismay. Not my. What the hell is wrong with you, boy? Torino snapped. What kind of hero walks away from a murder scene? If there's no villain to fight, there's no fucking point. Bakugo snarled. Who the fuck are you? Some no-name hero. I couldn't find any trace of you. I keep my accomplishments on the down low. Torino huffed. This may come as a surprise, but not all of us are in this for the glory. I got my license at a point in my life where I needed to use my quirk without restriction. The old man began to stretch. Now, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to land a hit on me. Now we're talking. Bakugo said with a smirk, only for Torino to, while causing as little damage. ECH. Fine. Torino pulled out his stopwatch. He clicked the watch, and Bakugo rushed forward, only to find empty space. The foo, a force slammed into his back. I never said I wouldn't fight back. Torino smirked. Tentha, hello. Hachako called warily as she stepped into the building. It's Hachako Uraraka. I'm here for my internship. She stepped in. I'm really looking forward to. A heavy force slammed into her side, launching her into a wall. Your situational awareness is shit, Mirko said smugly. Oh, was that necessary? Mirko smirked. Relax, kid. I won't break you too much. Be lucky I ain't Rappa. So what are we going to do? Kirishima asked. We're going to punch each other till we pass out! Exclamation. Rappa answered enthusiastically. Hell yeah! Exclamation. Kirishima wailed as he activated his quirk. The two began punching each other. Tenso your creati ha. Fat Gum said as he ate his tempura. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Momo nodded. My class representative told me our quirks were a good match. I trust in 10th Hagakure. Can you move? Aizawa asked as he took in the sight of the refraction girl sprawled on the floor. I don't know. Everything hurts. Hagakure whimpered. Aizawa shrugged. All right, we'll take a short break. So your quirk relies on verbal response, huh? Joke mused as she took in Shinso. There could be a problem if villains realize. Any suggestions to bypass that? Shinso asked. Yeah, puns. What tense I was asterisk cuff asterisk under the impression asterisk cuff asterisk we would be training Dark Shadow. Takoyami panted, his legs like jelly as he tried to catch his breath. Ninetales stopped her timer. Quirk training will be saved for later in the day. The earlier half of the day will be working on quirkless combat. She wrote some stuff down. Becoming too reliant on your quirk can be detrimental. There are going to be occasions where Dark Shadow won't be able to help you, or even where she can end up making things worse. I've seen more than a few heroes lose their lives simply because they were put into a situation where their quirk was useless and they had no idea how to fight without it. Takoyami couldn't fault that logic. Now then, Ninetales spoke up. I want you to try and subdue these training dummies without using dark shadows. She pointed to a pair of training dummies sprawled on the floor, which looked like full-body mannequins. When you say subdue, Din, who had been waiting in the corner with a metallic device on her hand, stepped forward. She held up her hand, and thin jets of blood sprayed from her fingertips, landing on the testing dummies. The blood glowed and seemed to solidify as the dummies jerked to their feet. Din Yaramoto : hero name, Hell. Quirk, animation. She can use her blood to animate and control any non-living thing. How much blood she uses determines how long she can control it. She's actually a rather controversial figure in the UK. YUSK. Let's just say that corpses are non-living things and leave it at that. 10th, who's the fucking Chinese kid? Izuku blinked in disbelief as one of Star's workers asked it. He's Japanese, Stevens. Star snapped. Stevens rolled his eyes. Yeah. He leaned over towards Izuku. Do you speak English? He said slowly and loudly. That's enough, Stevens. Star snapped as she steered Izuku towards the elevator. Sorry about him. He's a piece of work. Tensuyu's arms were aching as she did push-ups in time with Selkie's whistle. Kiro, 10th, I'm going to be honest. When I sent you an internship request, I didn't expect you to actually take it. Night, I said as he adjusted his glasses. My father didn't send me a request. Said he was too busy with an important case. Shoto said bluntly. Midori recommended you. He said you have experience with a variety of quirks, and I need to learn how to use my fire. Night, I nodded. Yes, I do analyze multiple different types of quirks. We'll see what we can do about your fire. 10th, Ronri looked over the city of Hasu. In a few days, all hell was going to break loose. She just knew it. Is heroics nothing but a game to you? Stain asked as he cleaned his sword, standing over the puddle of slime that was once a pro hero. He turned to the teenage girl sprawled on the ground. I guess it doesn't matter. I let you live because you're a child, but I can take solace in the fact a quirk like yours will never be able to taint the title of hero. He turned. Mina sobbed on the ground as she lay in a groin. She could. Chapter 57. Something on your mind, kid? Kamui Woods asked. I am. Worried that a girl at my school is in an abusive relationship, Shiozaki explained. Oh, he raised an eyebrow. Why do you think that? Do you have proof? First, I don't have definitive proof, but I know she was abused by her father, so. Cammy sighed. Look, kid, you can't go accusing people of things without definitive evidence. I've seen more than a few police officers, and even pros get in big trouble for that. Hell, even if it is true, you can get sued for defamation if you're not careful. He pat her on the head. Look before you leap, got that? 10th, what do you want, rat? You wouldn't call me from an internship unless it was important. Aizawa huffed, though he immediately stopped at the somber look on Ned's faces. Mina Shido and the pro hero she was interning with were attacked by the hero killer. The slime hero Goop is dead, and the doctors have confirmed that Shido is paralyzed from the waist down. What the fuck? I thought Stain was supposed to be in Hasu. Recent reports claimed that Stain was just sighted returning to Hasu, having apparently left at some point within the last week. Unfortunately, the fact that a pro hero was killed and her intern was crippled are beginning to make their way to news outlets, though luckily we were able to keep Ishido-san anonymous. What about Eri? Aizawa, can't we? We can have Eri rewind Ishido-san, but the mental trauma will remain. As I understand, she is quite, but she was able to rewind Kurogiri back into Aburo. We took a risk with Shirakumo-san. The brain is a fragile thing, and Eri's control over her quirk isn't perfect. Not only would rewinding Ishido's mind leave her with a large gap in her memory, something fuck, Aizawa said. 10th, Shako stared at the TV in horror. A student intern had been crippled by the hero killer. They didn't. Hey, the hell are you doing over there? Breakfast, Mirko called. Nearby, Kirishima and Rap, because of course, you were. Goop. Achako said, that's the hero. Kirishima froze. What? 10th, Bakugo groaned from his place in the floor. Disappointing. Torino huffed. You claim to be the best, yet you can't even hit an old man. Even All Might did better than that. Oh yeah, his mentor was a close friend of mine. After she died, I took over training him. What the fuck? I demand you teach me the same way you did All Might. I just did. Bakugo was floored both literally and metaphorically. Now, that's enough. Torino pulled. I want you to. I ain't. It's so you can familiarize yourself with the area. If you're that 10th Mina. Tor practically screeched as Mina was hooked up to. Oh God, to Root. Mina slurred quietly. Yeah, it's me. I'm too Rue. I can't feel my leg. Mina managed. Tor choked up. 10th endeavor ceased. I'm in the middle. Really? Sakachi asked. I'm reopening the case of my eldest son. Endeavor explained. You have our condolences. Neju, but at the moment, we gang Orkan Hawks and All Might in a skinny form were there too. Yes, Sakachi explained. Our informant from the Yakuza raid and the Metal Liberation Army raid has gotten into contact with us. They have reason to believe that Pro-Hero Native will be killed by the hero killer tomorrow. I fail to see why the Endeavor grumbled. Because our informant also believes the League of Villains will launch an attack on Hasu at the same time and an attempt to kill Stain and spread their name, Neju explained, using more of the Namu they used in their assault on Yue. Well, considering who is this informant and where I'm a Neju sighed. I'm surprised you're here, All Might. Hawk spoke up. Didn't one of those Namu almost kill you? My concern lays mostly in the hero killer, All Might explained. He attacked and crippled my student, and from what information we were able to get from young Ishido, part of his motivation is quirkiest in nature. All Might wasn't smiling. A dangerous stain has made me very mad. Bakugo huffed as he damn old man, but at least carrying the heavy bags could be exercise. He passed by a group of kids. A boy glowed. He didn't even have to use his quirk in the last match. Yet a little girl. If I learn how to fight, I'll be a hero like him. Bakugo could. The only thing you'll be is a pathetic loser with your weak-ass quirk brat. Bakugo barked, getting the kid's attention. Who are you? A boy with axe. I'm Katsuki Bakugo, the future #1 hero. Bakugo snarled. The children looked at it. Then they started laughing. Ha, you're crazy, mister. A girl laughed. Didn't you see how Deku beat that monster that even All Might couldn't beat? Yeah, he's already stronger than All Might. Axolotl boy laughed. Yeah, he'll never be better than Deku. There was a long moment of silence as Bakugo processed their words. The explosive blonde turned and silently shuffled away, a distant stare in his eyes. Sensei, I have a plan. I need some Namu. Oh, what is this about Tamura? All Might's getting weaker, Shigaraki explained. Every time he goes over, there was a moment of silence. All for one laughed. That is actually an interesting plan, Tamura. Very well, I'll support it. He turned. Dr. Garaki, how's the progress on the Namu hood? Ronri shuffled quietly as she looked down at the hospital. Mina knees. Hurt? She asked. Slowly, she made her way to the day Ijiro Kirishima had. Chapter 50. Mina was in constant pain, even with all the drugs currently circulating through her body. She couldn't open her eyes due to the anesthesia, and so she could only lay there numbly, slipping a tiny Mina knee. Oh, it was Uri. Poor thing. She shouldn't. It's okay, Uri-chan. Mina managed to get out. Overhaul. For a few brief moments, Mina was in utter agony. Then it stopped. Mina, she was no longer. Also, her legs were tingling. Hesitantly, she began to cry. 10th, you are going to jail letter 1EC1T. Any trouble for this dot? Kirishima ignored the little voice in the back of his head, clutching at his custom case tighter as he watched the landscape speed by from the train. He's a ring serial letter 1E31 Iala Q Tele Brevar skillet enough toe letter 1E6 B letter 1E01. He didn't care. He could find a way. That man, that monster had hurt Mina, one of the most heroic people he had ever met. Mana world at 1T letter 1E29. Shut up, shut up. Kirishima blinked at a crunching sound. If you continue down this path, you won't. The hell, Kirishima. Mina is fine now. She's been healed. No, that was impossible. There was no healing quirk in the world powerful enough to undo the death. He turned to yell. The seat was. We just got a call from Mirko's agency. Neji noted. Apparently, Ijiro Kirishima has vanished from the premises, along with his hero costume. Aizawa swore. Given what Midoriya had told them regarding the previous timeline, it was highly likely. I will inform Vlad King of this development, as well as the Team All Might is currently leading to Hasu. However, there is something else I need to tell you. Neju, we just received a call from the hospital. Apparently, Mina Shido has made a full, miraculous recovery. 10th, hey, big guy. Hawks greeted as he sauntered over to All Might. Was wondering if you were up for a chat. Of course, young man. Toshinori sighed. We won't have much time when we get to Haas. Hawks nodded sagely. Then his face took on an uncharacteristic seriousness. Listen, he spoke quietly so that no one else could hear. The commission president's looking for anything, no matter how small, that can be used to discredit Izuku Midoriya. You know how the commission is. Anything they can't control, they get rid of, and more than anything, they want control of that little girl from the Yakuza raid. Toshinori smiled. So that's how 10th was a pain in the ass getting to Hasu without Kyoji. Enough that it made Tamira's skin. First chance he got, he was busting Kyojiri out of whatever prison those damn heroes had him in. You said I could fight the strongest. The hooded nom. Yes, All Might is the strongest. Tamira explained. Why don't you go destroy some stuff, see if you can draw him out. Oh, and if you see a man in a blood. The hooded Namu lunged at the city with a snarl, along with the 6 other Namu Shigaraki had brought with him. You know All Might works at you up. Rika hissed. What are the chances he'll even come to Hasu? Even if All Might doesn't show up, Hood will make sure he never lives it down. Tamura Hasu City. 10th, there were screams all around. Namu here. Why would the villains who attacked you? He had to help. He had to do something. He stopped as he saw I had meant to get you the day of the sports festival. Stain grunted as he finally managed to, but you weren't in the city at the time. Stain creeped up. I will not kill you, but you. Stain raised his blade. He heard footsteps. Stain swung his sword, which shattered upon meeting something hard. Stain stumbled back as a rock-hard fist struck him, shaking his head clear. He leveled. What is this? He grumbled. A child. The red-haired boy stood up, his skin hardening as he glared. My name is Red Riot. Kirishima yelled that he hardened his skin. And you're gonna pay for what you did to Mina. Who the fuck was Mina? Didn't matter. Apparently, this child was here for vengeance. I suggest you watch your words carefully, boy. Stain sneered. If need be, even someone as young as you can be my target. Turn around and leave, and I will get out of here. Ingenium. Kid, this has nothing to do with. Kirishima didn't listen. Instead, Stain swung his knife, but she's one of the most heroic people I've ever met. And you exclamation. How dare you? What gives you the right to decide she can't be a hero? Kirishima roared, punching Stain too fast for the killer to react, his blades unable to pierce Kirishima's hardened skin, especially. With an angry growl, Kirishima slammed the dazed man into the ground. He angrily raised his fist for the final blow. Thin, white threads wrapped around Kirishima's. Hey. A voice, your quirk. The threads tightened painfully, and Kirishima could only watch in growing. It's just like hers. And then Kirishima's hardening disabled as he let a few ribs. Looking up, he tried to move. The girl brought her. I'll kill you in a minute. Hanako spoke in an eerily soft voice as she turned to investigate the alley. Kirishima lay there, bound tightly in her webs, fading in and out of consciousness. What the hell do you think you're doing, boy? Kirishima jolted at the voice, eyes widening as he saw a familiar figure standing above him. Crimson. Riot. Kirishima croaked. Are you really here? Of course not. Crimson Riot. I'm just a hallucination brought on by blood loss and head trauma. Oh. Now I'll ask again. What the hell do you think you're doing? Crimson Riot demanded. First I was. It's admirable that you seek to preserve your friend's honor, but vengeance, Crimson Riot scolded. Vengeance gives way to hatred and anger. Revenge is a vicious cycle and will only destroy. First, I'm sorry, sir. Is he talking to himself now? Hanako, you are a hero, Crimson Riot. Now stand up, Red. He's right, Doc. I'm acting like an Mina. Kirishima Hanako tied her webs. In response, this girl can cut right, so I just need to get. Come on. Kirishima, harder. If she become unbreakable exclamation. Kirishima roared as Hanako's web snapped. He rushed forward, his appearance hardened to the point that he looked like a goddamn monster as he pulled his fist back. Red Gauntlet. Kirishima roared as he slammed his fist into Hanako's head with all his might. Her exoskeleton shattered under the impact, and Hanako was slammed into a wall with immense force. Kirishima stumbled, panting as his unbreakable faltered, and he was unknown. The first day of elementary school was kind of intimidating. There were so many people. Hanako was nervous. Maybe she should find Cethilla. She didn't know anyone else. Hi, nice to meet you. Hanako blinked at the red-haired girl that had come up to her, smiling brightly. What's your name? The girl asked kindly. Oh, what? Hanako Yumara. Hanako? That's a nice name. The girl chirped. You look like a big spider. Is that your quirk? It's so cool. All I can do is make my skin really hard. She demonstrated by turning her arm into a diamond-like substance. Not really as cool. I think it's nice. Hanako stuttered. She smiled brightly at Hanako's encouragement. She had a pretty smile. The first day is kind scary, huh? She mused. Why, yet it is. I was trying to find my friend Cethilla. I'll help, she said as she took Hanako's hand. Oh, I didn't tell you my name. Did I? My name's Mira Akatone. Let's be friends, okay, Yumara-san. Present day : Hanako's eyes snapped open. The area exploded in a flurry of razor-sharp webs. Achako panted from her position on the rooftop as she clutched her bleeding side, only to freeze as an explosion of white threads erupted from a few black spider webs. She realized. Yumara-san?
Yeah, that's what you need, my god. Okay, now let's continue with more of this shit.
Earlier that day, Achako groaned in pain as she was thrown against the wall for the upteenth time. Not bad, Cub. Mirko smirked, wiping the small cut on her cheek where Achako had managed to glance her. I couldn't even get a solid hit in. Kid, I'm the number 5 hero. The fact that you managed to hurt me at all after a couple days of training is pretty damn impressive, especially since I was going all out. How Mirko rolled her eyes. Kid, a villain ain't gonna hold back. It's better I just go all and then try to sugarcoat it. Speaking of villains, go get your stuff. We're going to Shibuya to fight some baddies. Wait, what? If you keep fighting just me, you'll pick up some habits that could get you killed against an opponent that fight differently. I'd have you fight Rapid, but he'd snap you like a twig. Damn these twigs! Why are they so flimsy? Rapid shouted from the other room. What about Kirishima? Shouldn't we be looking for him? I've already let you, eh? No, they said they were on it and that I shouldn't let it interfere with your training. She shrugged. Not much we can do. So go ahead and grab your shit. 10th, all right, we're done. Torino spoke up. Damn it, I'm not done. The Hugo growled as he stood, covered in bruises. You don't get to decide that, boy. Now grab your stuff. We're going to Shibuya. Huh? If you just keep fighting me, you'll pick up some weird habits. Hell, I can already tell you have some from before you came here. You always start a fight with a big right hook. It's too predictable. Either you don't realize you're doing it or you're just that arrogant. Either way, it needs to stop. We're going to Shibuya to fight some villains, and I want to see some variation in how you fight them compared to now. 10th, hey, so we're not going to get there till really late. That's when most villains are active, Mirko informed as she kicked back in her seat. Achako looked out the window. We're passing through Hasu, is that okay? I know the school doesn't want us here. It should be fine since we're on a train, but if the school does have a problem, they can take it up with me. Mirko waved her off. Achako decided to look out the window. An explosion went off in the distance. Mirko. All of the passengers yelled as the train pulled to an abrupt stop. Then the wall of the train exploded. Achako was hurled out of her seat as a limp form crashed next to her. She opened her eyes to find herself staring into the lifeless eyes of the normal hero, Manuel. Where is he? A massive black form of a hooded Namu demanded as he pulled himself into the train. Where's the strongest? Where is All Might? What the fuck? Mirko snarled as she pulled herself up. Before she could move, a form blasted up from the back of the train. D! Bakugo roared as he let out a massive explosion in Hood's face. Bakugo! Achako shouted in disbelief. The fuck are you doing here, Kirby? Bakugo snarled. That was. Hood's clawed hand shot out and grabbed Bakugo by the face. Pathetic exclamation. Bakugo let loose a multitude of explosions into the Namu's face to no effect. You are weak! Exclamation. You are not the strongest! Exclamation. The Namu snarled as he began squeezing. A yellow blur shot out and slammed into the Namu's face, distracting it as Mirko slammed her foot into his gut, causing him to drop Bakugo as the two of them flew out of the train and hit a nearby roof. Mirko! Achako shouted as she leapt off after her mentor. The Namu roared, black tendrils erupting from his skin. Achako screamed as one pierced her side, reopening the stab wound Kamakiri had given her. Damn it! Torino shouted. Hood reared back, an extremely long tendril erupted. The group could only hang on. 10th, are you all right, Ashido? Aizawa asked cautiously. The pink-skinned girl was first. I feel fine. Ashido-san, could you? Nezu, what do you mean? Wasn't it Iri who healed me? Both Aizawa and Nezu looked at each other. Why do you think Iri? Aizawa asked. Well, she was here. She held my hand and spoke to me. She called me Minane. She used her quirk on me, I think. I'm not entirely sure what her quirk is. Midoriya is pretty. Did you ask? No, I was all drugged up on anesthetics, so I see. Nezu spoke. Could you describe young Iri's quirk to the best of your ability? Well, it was painful. Like I was being ripped apart atom by atom, then put right back together. Oh, the other Iri had Overhaul's quirk. It was either hey, what's going on TV? Mina asked. Aizawa and Nezu turned to the tension. Mirko grunted as she pushed herself up. The ruins of the building had completely blocked off several. Kid, I'm here. Achako cried from the other side of the rubble, clutching at her bleeding side. She didn't see the old guy or what she did see was what looked like, "All right, listen," Mirko cried towards Achako. "Try to make your way towards the hospital. You have my permission to fight, but try to avoid ITI if you can." "Okay," Achako cried out. The gravity girl tripped back. She kicked her boots to the ground. She had gotten her updated costume just before the sports festival, and she used her quirk on herself, fighting back a wave of nausea as she activated her boots. They had been designed after Gran Torino's quirk, building up air every time she took a step. A blast of air ejected. A group of heroes were trying to lead a group of civilians to safety. Key word being trying. The battles between heroes and Nam left Hasu in utter chaos, attacks and rubble flying everywhere. In the process, a young boy stumbled, falling behind from the frantic group. An explosion caused a nearby water tower to tip and fall off a nearby building, plummeting to where the boy had tripped. The boy's mother screamed. A man pushed himself out of the crowd, lunging towards the boy. The water tower crashed. "Akira!" The mother wailed. "Akira!" exclamation. The crowd could only stare on in horror. Clack, clack, clack. The group froze in surprise as a small blue marble bounced out of the debris before exploding in a flash, revealing a very confused young Akira and the man who leapt to save him. "Not to worry, madam." Atsuhiro Sako spoke with a bow. "Your son is just fine." As the frantic mother rushed towards her son, the heroes checked to make sure the rest of the crowd was. "Thank you for your assistance." A hero nodded towards Sako. "A quirk like that could help clear a path out of here. Mind lending a hand?" "I'd be delighted too." 10th Achako was out of breath and in pain. She stopped panting as she clutched at her bleeding side. A loud crash caused her to jolt. She looked up to see an explosion of white spider webs. She realized, "Yumara, 1 year prior, your quirk has a transformation aspect." Izuku asked excitedly, jotting down in his notebook excitedly. Hanako blinked. She had only mentioned it offhand. There are cases of full-body heteromorphs having transformation aspects to their quirk. He internally frowned as he remembered the villain Chimera from Nabu Island. "You never really talked about it." "Oh, yeah, it makes me really strong. And my venom, which usually just causes paralysis, becomes deadly. It deteriorates organic matter at a rapid pace, like the venom of a brown recluse on trigger." Izuku was surprised as she seemed to grow uncomfortable. "Would it be possible for me to see it?" "No!" exclamation. Hanako shouted, causing Izuku to jump in surprise. "First, sorry, it's just I kind of lose control when I use the transformation. My mind evolves and I'm more like a feral animal. I accidentally put Cethilla in the hospital last time I used it. I didn't even recognize her until I calmed down enough to go back to my base state. That's why I usually don't." "First, I'm sorry. I didn't realize." No, it's fine." She gave him a bright smile. "It's not like you could have known anyway." She kicked back. "So anyway, let's finish this project. Present time : Kirishima was in pain as he pushed himself up, covered in bloody cuts. The spider girl was nearby, clutching at her head as if in agony. Her exoskeleton rapidly regenerated, turning a dark brown, spikes erupting from her back, growing a foot taller, her muscles compressing themselves. Kirishima stood in shock, raising his arms as he prepared to keep fighting. Hanako had frozen, head down, saliva dripped. Curious. Hey, Hanako moved. So fast Kirishima didn't even know what happened until he was brutally slammed into the street, a spray of blood coming from his mouth as he hit the ground. Hanako stood above him, drooling, unbreakable. Kirishima shouted, crossing his arms. The next, Kirishima screamed as she grabbed his foot, brutally slamming him into the ground repeatedly as though he were a rag doll. Kirishima could only wail in agony as her attacks broke straight through his unbreak. Finally, she hurled him down the street. The utterly feral Kirishima, in utter panic, desperately threw a punch. Hanako grabbed his hand, squeezed, and pulled. Kirishima could only wail in agony as his arm was ripped off over the wails of agony. "Yumara-san, get back!" A hero cried as the large, muscular Namu. The abomination stood, muscles bulging as it raised its arms and slammed into the ground, generating a large shockwave. In the utter chaos, the Namu "Look out!" exclamation. One of her colleagues cried as the Namu, "Only do not worry, my fellow," a voice that immediately brought the other, because Chapter 61. Yumara-san, Achako croaked out cautiously. She had informed her of this other form of hers, but to actually see it in person. Yumara-san. It's me, your Raka. Remember, Achako tried carefully. Hanako, Achako narrowly dodged a vicious swipe that would have likely taken off her head had it not been for the training regimen Izuku put her through, narrowly being the key word. Yumara-san, please calm down. I don't want to hurt you. She took a step back before doing a double take at the sight of Kirishima laying on the ground. Oh, are you still conscious? Achako asked as she tried to keep her eye on the feral spider girl. If you can hear me, try activating your quirk on your arm. It might slow. Achako tried, recalling the very detailed notes Izuku had on Kirishima. She let out a brief sigh as the skin around Kirishima's bloody stump hardened, slowing the bleeding considerably. Then she yelped, leaping out of the way as Hanako. She remembered asking Yu-sen, who said that while powerful, this form of Yumara-sense was taxing to her body. She just had, hopefully. The thing was held a surprising combination of intelligence and ferociousness. It was also ridiculously fast, easily outrunning and dodging his flames. He would have gotten Hawks to help, but the boy was currently occupied with a Namu that looked like a giant lamprey. All at once, a massive shockwave exploded through the area as a large, hooded Namu crashed into the ground. Can't find him. Where is he? Where's Al? May I text? The hooded Namu roared out. Then the Namu twitched head, turning to a nearby area. I sense. Power, are you the strong? With that, the Namu took off, dodging the blasts of fire Endeavor sent after him as he tried to keep the hound X. Bakugo growled as he pushed the rubble off of himself. The old man was nowhere in sight, but he could see the utter chaos that was erupting in Hasu. After a moment, he grinned. Well, the old man said they were going to fight villains, didn't he? X. All Might panted as he slammed the Namu into the ground, its eyes going blank as it slipped into unconsciousness. In terms of power, they were up there with the anti-symbol of peace, but they lacked the shock absorption quirk, so they weren't too much of a problem. No, the problem came when an explosion erupted from the other side of the city as a black, hooded Namu went flying through the air in All Might's direction. After a few moments, the Namu managed. How strong, how powerful. The Namu's eyes suddenly locked on all. You are All Might. Yar. Strong. Have to. We'll kill you. All Might took on a defensive position as he heard the Namu speak. Young Midoriya had warned him about the high-end Namus and how Endeavor almost died fighting just one in the original timeline. The other Namu were feral in mindset and easy to take care of once you recognized their patterns, but one that could think intelligently. This would be a problem, X. Achako grunted, her costume torn by the razor's sharp webs hurled recklessly at her as she used her air boots to leap between walls. She knew she should probably prioritize getting Kirishima out of here, but with Yumara-san in this state, it looked like trying to flee with him would only increase the chances of Achako getting killed. As it stood, she tried her other option. She spoke out with the intention of trying to get through to her friend. Yumara-san, do you remember when we all went to that noodle shop? And the ramen was so spicy you actually burst into flames. Achako panted as she dodged a collapsing wall. When Yumara-san showed no reaction, she tried again. Remember when we went to the zoo? And you got us kicked out after getting into that fist fight with the giraffe, even though the zookeeper acknowledged the giraffe totally deserved it. Despite the situation, Achako couldn't help a small chuckle at the memories of that utterly bizarre day. Again she tried. Or even during New Year's when you got us kicked out of the karaoke place because your singing was so bad. Hanako twitched. Achako tried one last time. Remember when you and Yumara-san tricked me, Izuku, and AI into getting together? First I was annoyed at the time, but the truth is I'm actually really grateful. I know you did it because you care about us. We care about you too. We've all been worried sick about you. Yu-san has been even less talkative since you disappeared. We were all scared that something bad had happened to you. Please, you need to calm down. We're friends, remember? Hanako lunged at Shako, holding up the metal piece of rebar she had as Hanako tried to bite her, fangs clenching around the metal as the girl's strength shoved Shako onto her back, the metal beginning to give way as Hanako tried to maul her. Please, you're not acting like the Yumara-san, I know. Achako squeezed her eyes shut, awaiting the inevitable. Snap out of it, Hanako! Exclamation. Achako screamed, voice echoing through the night. Something wet dripped onto Achako's face. Slowly, the gravity girl opened her eyes. Hanako's eyes, previously blank with feral bloodlust, were now filled in, tears running from all 8 of them as she took in the girl pinned below her. Slowly, Hanako's body shifted back into its base state, the immense force she had been applying to the rebar in her mouth dissipating. Achako pulled the remnant away, pushing herself up as she enveloped the spider girl in a hug. Hanako choked out. Why are you even here? Because we're friends, aren't we? Achako answered. Of course I'd be here. Please, come home. We've all been worried sick about you. Friends. We're friends. This is disgustingly sweet. The air stiffened as the new voice. Achako looked up to see a figure limping out of the alley, his face twisted in a sneer. After a moment, the implications of this scene hit Achako like a truck. Yumara-san. Achako whispered, voice cracking. Why are you with the hero killer? Tensei Ada panted atop the roof. He had managed to break free from the hero killer's quirk shortly before the man himself had regained consciousness. As much as he hated it, he had to get out of the fight immediately, not sure if he would have even been able to restrain Stain with the crazy spider girl still putting up a fight. He didn't want to leave those kids for even a second, but the situation had gotten out of hand, and the deep gash Stain had inflicted on Tensei's leg didn't help matters. He just needed some breathing room. He spoke into his radio. Can anyone hear me? We need backup now. Chapter. Yumara, get out of here. Hanako spoke. Please, just run. Yumara-san. Stain lunged. 10th All Might was beginning to run out of time, and this damn high-end just wouldn't go down. He was sure a significant blow to the head would at least knock it out, but it was intelligent enough to protect it. He couldn't beat it to a pulp either since, while it didn't have shock absorption, its regeneration seemed stronger than the anti-symbol of peace. Detroit Smash All Might yelled, slamming his fist into the Namu's gut and sending him through a nearby building. Fight harder! Exclamation. The high-end roared. The Namu leapt away from a spray of flames. Are you really still fighting this damn thing? Endeavor, are you all right? Your arm. I'll be fine. That damn mud took a bit out, but it also left it close enough to incinerate. My arm is still usable. Endeavor answered, moving his injured arm to show it was somewhat fine. This thing is guarding its head, and with its regeneration, we'll need something a lot more permanent to take it down. All Might conceded. If you can manage to hold it down, I can fry its head. Endeavor suggested, intensifying his sounds like a plan. All Might answered as he took a fighting stance. Hawks grunted, barely managing to dodge the Lamprey Namu's lunge, which destroyed a good chunk of building. He slashed its skin with his feather swords, but it was too tough to really make much of a difference, especially since it just regenerated. The Namu lunged, only for a yellow blue to slam into its head, knocking it out and cracking the building. HNF didn't mean to break the building. Must be more out of practice than I thought. Torino huffed as he managed to stand. You there, young man, you see a blonde with firecrackers for hands and a temper to match come through here. Sorry, old-timer. Been too busy with this thing. Hawk said sheepishly. Fair enough. Gran Torino shrugged. I heard some of the other heroes' radios going off, Ingenium requesting immediate backup. Said something about the hero killer. He pointed toward a quieter section of the city. Given your quirk doesn't seem to be doing well against these Namu, you may want to check it out. I'll catch up after I get this thing restrained. Got it? Thanks, old-timer. Hawks bowed his head in respect and took off toward the location Torino had pointed to. 10th Hanako could only stand there as Achako barely dodged Stain's swords, her mind too much in disarray to act. Why are you trying to kill me? Achako practically screamed. Instead of trying to subdue a villain, you befriend her and act all buddy-buddy. Stain sneered. That could only mean your morals have been compromised. You are no better than the other fakes. Killing you will help bring about a better society. A society all might would approve. You're such a fucking hypocrite. Ochako snapped. A better society. The only thing your killing does is cause fear among the masses. All Might would never approve of this. He wants a society where people could be equal. Were you even watching the sports festival? Yumara-san, Ochako shouted. How could you associate with this psychopath after what he did to Mina? She demanded. The question seemed to snap Hanako out of her trance. Wait, what happened to Mina? Hanako asked, startled. Stain crippled her. There was silence as all fighting seemed to stop. What? Hanako choked out. Who the hell is Mina? Stain questioned, holding his blade toward Ochako threateningly. Ochako snapped. Are you talking about that brat who was interning with Goop? She was insignificant. A mere child who couldn't even take heroics seriously, bouncing around like a clown on a sugar high. On top of that, she had a quirk, one only suitable for villainy. There was silence. Then Hanako snapped. Stain barely leapt out of the way of the razor-sharp webs that came down on him. So that's, he sneered. I don't care who you are. Hanako said lowly. I won't let you hurt my friend's exclamation. You're no better than the people I've had to suffer under exclamation. Stain leapt under her webs, darting to her. Hanako, too tired at this point to be able to dodge properly, grunted as Stain managed to slide one of his blades into a layered spot of her exoskeleton, slicing the skin within. Before Hanako could react, she found her body unable to move. And here I thought I'd found it, Stain sneered. But you're just as compromised as the rest of them. He lifted his sword. I'd get away from her exclamation. At once, a large chunk of concrete flew at Stain with immense force. He dodged, only for the concrete to stop in midair and reverse direction, slamming into Stain from behind as he grunted. Yura, Raka. Hanako managed to get out, looking up at Ochako, who seemed just as surprised as she did at what just happened. She controlled the direction of gravity. Is this a quirk evolution? Even knowing she associated herself with me, you still try to protect her. Stain snarled. I want my own answers from Yumara-san. Ochako shouted. Now get the hell away from her, you Voldemort-looking asshole. 10th Ronri watched the chaos below unfold quietly. Uraraka's quirk awakened from a desire to save Hanako. Ronri noted. She had noticed Merkel was near where All Might and Endeavor were fighting Hood, and she could see Hawks making his way over to the Stain fight. Now, where was Search? There you are. Ronri noted as she sensed Bakugo rapidly making his way towards the Stain fight. I think this battle will be what decides your fate here. Kakanai. In a nearby apartment, a young man, startled awake by the sounds of fighting, looked out his window to see the hero killer in battle with a couple of kids. In surprise and disbelief, he grabbed his camera and began to record. Chapter 63. Shigaraki laughed a mad cackle that he had to practice not to devolve into a coughing fit as he took in the utter chaos. Now this is a good, he cackled. The fuck's your obsession with games? Rika Hyota huffed. 10th Bakugo had heard those damn no-name heroes' radios going off. He heard that weak-ass Ingenium begging for help against the hero killer like the fucking pussy he was. This was it. This was his moment. The moment he would beat the damn hero killer within an inch of his life and prove he was the best. Nothing would stand in his way. 10th, the strongest, must fight alone. Hood howled as he was slammed into a building. You need help to fight me. Does that mean? All Might grabbed the abomination and slammed him into the ground. Hood let out an inhuman screech, throwing the symbol of peace off of him as he stood. A shadow cast over him, and Hood's arm. Rabbit. Going to run away again. Little rabbit. Mirko asked. The fuck are you talking about? Do I know you? Our rabbit won't let you escape again. Round 2 exclamation. Hood roared before a flaming javelin from Endeavor severed his arm and freed Mirko. X. What the fuck is going on, you damn quack? Shigaraki demanded over the phone as he watched Hood's battle. That high-end just started acting like All Might doesn't even exist now. He's focusing almost completely on the damn rabbit hero. Interesting, Garaki mused. I did have to rush Hood out for this little plan of yours. Perhaps seeing Mirko caused some of his old self to resurface. You should call Hood back. I need to. I can't, Shigaraki snarled. It's completely ignoring my orders now. He hung up, decaying the phone in the process. Damn it, I must not have enough gym badges to properly control this monster. He scratched his neck in irritation. It's supposed to kill All Might. All Might exclamation. Not some stupid rabbit in a leotard. Tenth, the unfortunate truth was, even with her sudden quirk awakening, Ochako was still at a disadvantage. She needed to touch Stain in order to immobilize him, the problem being that she would need to get suicidally close to him and his blades to do so. There wasn't much she could use as ammunition either. A few trash cans and stuff like that, but not nearly enough stuff that could get her a proper opening. Luckily, an opening made itself present as a flurry of red feathers descended down upon the battle. Hawk's exclamation Stain roared. You commission lackey exclamation. Sup came the easygoing voice of the number 3. Now why are you making me out to be the bad guy when you're here trying to fillet a bunch of children? Ochako took her chance. As Stain was kept busy trying to guiltily slash the storm of feathers that had engulfed him, Ochako rushed forward. By the time Stain had realized what she was doing, he had no chance to react as Ochako's fingers were mere centimeters from touching him. Die exclamation! Before Ochako's fingers could so much as graze the hero killer, a large explosion sounded, the concussive force blasting her back, and the immense heat burning away Hawk's feathers. Ochako tumbled down the street before fighting herself. Bakugo! She practically shouted, anger rising as she realized the explosive blonde's arrogance and temper had completely ruined their chance of subduing Stain. Stay the fuck out of my way, round cheeks. This one's mine. The hell? Hawk shouted as he righted himself. The hero's usual easygoing look replaced with one of anger. What the fuck do you think you're doing, boy? Stand down now! Exclamation. Shut up, you damn surfer reject. I don't take orders from you. Bakugo snapped as he punched his palm. Know this hero killer, the name's Katsuki Bakugo, the future number 1 hero, and I'm going to enjoy beating the absolute shit out of you. They'll have to scrape you off the streets when I'm done. Stain narrowed his eyes in disgust. 10th Hood was an intelligent and powerful Namu, that much was sure. But that was all for naught when faced with 3 powerful opponents working together, especially when he was mostly focusing on one of them. All Might slammed into Hood from behind, pinning him down as Mirko rushed in, managing to wrap her legs around the abomination's neck. Luna Tigris. With a violent twist, Hood's head was ripped from his body and hurled into the air. Prominence burn. Endeavor shouted as a wave of powerful flames engulfed the severed head, reducing it to ash. All Might slammed the still writhing body into the ground as Endeavor promptly rushed over it, slamming a superheated palm into the Namu's neck stump as it had begun to regenerate, cauterizing the wound. After a few more moments of struggle, the monster finally went still. Well, that was exhausting. Mirko huffed. Young Yuzujiyama, what are you doing in Hasu? All Might asked. You're supposed to be training young Uraraka. We were on a train heading to Shibuya when what's-his-face here. She motioned to Hood's body, crashed into our train. We got separated in the chaos. Shit, All Might swore. First, I have a hunch where she might be. I just pray that I'm wrong. Oh, yeah, there was this short old guy on the train with another UA student. Could look like a damn Pomeranian. God fucking. 10th dammit exclamation. Bakugo roared as Stain planted his foot into his back. With a quick lick of his blood-covered blade, Bakugo found himself unable to move. Nearby, Hawks also lay paralyzed, having taken a nick trying to save Bakugo from his own arrogant stupidity. You, Stain sneered. You are the worst here. I will take immense pleasure in ridding the world of your vile filth. A rush of air had Stain look up in alarm. Forget about me, Ochako demanded. Behind her floated a large amount of debris from Bakugo and Stain's short battle. At once, the debris shot at Stain like a rocket. Ultimate move, meteor shower. The hero killer leapt around in desperation to avoid the attack, taking a few hits as he tried to rush in with the intent of disemboweling the gravity girl. A web shot out, catching Stain's hand. What? How did? He glared at Anako leaning against a wall for support as she caught his hand. That's right. She said she was type A. He grabbed his knife, intent on cutting the web. Kirishima moved. Despite the immense pain from his broken body, despite the lightheadedness from blood loss, despite the fact his arm had been ripped off, he moved, because he knew, above all else, that Uraraka needed an opening. He slammed a hardened fist into Stain's stomach, catching the man completely off guard, whining him. Kirishima grabbed him with his remaining arm, and with the last of his strength, he hurled Stain into the air just before his own body gave out and he collapsed. In the air, Stain recovered quickly, prepared to slash Achako's throat as she rushed at him. A figure leapt from a nearby roof. Tensei's engine-powered fist slammed into Stain's jaw. It wasn't a strong attack, given Tensei's weakened state, but it had stunned the hero killer just long enough for Achako to get in and plant all 5 fingers on his chest, an aura of gravity overtaking the man. You little. Achako spun in air, slamming her foot into Stain's stomach, whining him as she grabbed his foot, spun him around, and slammed him into the street hard enough to crack it before she increased the gravity on the man, keeping him pinned. Panting, exhausted, Achako Uraraka no Uravity stood victoriously over the unconscious form of the hero killer. Hood was dead, thanks to the combined efforts of All Might Endeavor and Mirko. Garaki scoffed in frustration. The high ends were supposed to be the pinnacle of his Namu research. Even Rushed Out should have done better. Instead, it went rogue as soon as it was confronted with Mirko. This wouldn't do. Garaki could do more. An idea came to him, a brilliant one. He would have to speak to his lord about it, but he had no doubt a man as wonderful as him would agree. With a little bit of time and enough resources, Dr. Garaki could make Nomus on par with Giganimation, his ultra-high ends. Chapter 64. Don't move around too much. Tensei spoke as he applied a tourniquet to Kirishima's arm. You've lost a lot of blood already. This should keep you somewhat stable until we can get you to a hospital. Nearby, Hawks was helping Achako bind up Stain, having removed his blades. What are you doing? Achako asked curiously as she saw some of Hawk's small feathers flitting around Stain's form. Always make sure to thoroughly search villains when you restrain them, the older man said. Never know what they might be hiding on their person. One of his feathers pulled out a pocket knife that was hidden in Stain's wristband. See what I mean? Damn it. Bakugo growled, huddled nearby, only for Hawks to swat him on the head. Enough, the normally laid-back hero snapped. Don't you dare go around throwing a damn tantrum. We had the situation more than under control. Your actions very nearly screwed up this whole thing and almost got people killed. You're already in trouble for interfering. Don't make it worse. As this went on, Achako made her way over to Hanako, who by this point was too tired to move. Yumara-san. Achako knelt down. Hanako refused to meet her eyes. Yumara-san, please. Why would you associate with the hero killer? We've all been so worried about you. Please? Hanako spoke. Do you remember? Gallant Blade. Gallant Blade. Tensei spoke up. He was one of Stain's first victims. Very vocal with his mutant quirkism. There was a huge scandal at one point where he was accused of murdering a civilian. A man with spider muto no Tensei's eyes went wide in realization. He killed my dad. Hanako choked out, tears starting to run down her face. He murdered my dad, and the commission protected him. Achako realized in that moment that she didn't know Hanako Yumara as well as she thought she did. All Might Endeavor and Mirko arrived soon after, with Gran Torino showing up as well, having had to subdue another Namu on the way. Mirko supplied some of her hair to help further bind Kirishima's arm as a couple more heroes arrived to help secure the area. They got word the remaining Namu had been successfully subdued by a civilian who could compress anything into small marbles, having been assisted by several other pro-heroes. The police will be here soon, Tensei explained. Tashinori, who had run out of time at this point, could only sigh. Young Uraraka, I wish you wouldn't have had to get involved in this situation. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do, and you were given permission to fight. He clapped her on the shoulder with a smile. Well done, young lady. Bakugo watched this exchange with a sneer. Katsuki Bakugo. The entire group froze as Stain's voice cut in. How the explosive blonde turned around, met with a death glare by the restrained serial killer as Achako stood nearby, ready to use her quirk if need be. You charged in recklessly, attacking without any sort of care for the heroes already present, only intent on taking the glory of beating me for yourself. Bakugo's fingers twitched. You're reckless, arrogant, violent. You don't care about anything besides boosting your fragile little ego. Shut up. Bakugo growled, sparks popping in his hands. Shut the fuck up. Bakugo, control your temper, Torino warned. You proclaim yourself to be the future #1. Stain sneered. But the truth is, you are the worst kind of scum to defile the name hero. You are nothing but a villain. I said shut up! Exclamation. Bakugo roared as before anyone could react, he unleashed the strongest explosion that he could in Stain's direction. The truth was, he could still release explosions of that magnitude even without those gauntlets, the support gear only necessary to eliminate the drawbacks of such a powerful attack, as using the attack with his own hands was actually likely to hurt Bakugo himself. Achako, who was near Stain, could only stand in shock as the explosion rapidly approached, her life flashing before her eyes. The pro heroes present were frozen in shock at the sight. Young Rock! Exclamation. Toshinori hacked up blood at the sight. For his credit, Bakugo's face dropped as he seemed to realize what he had just done as the smoke cleared and Stain's charred form hit the ground. Nearby, safely out of the explosion's radius, Achako could only stare in shock as Hanako shakily pushed herself up, having managed to tackle Gravity Girl out of the way at the last second. There was a moment of silence, then white threads flew through. So you think that you can do what? Hanako hissed as she stumbled over in Bakugo's direction, giving off a I suffered for years at the hands of people like you, just because I looked different, just because they were told they were meant to be the best, that they were above everyone else, that I was a fucking freak because Bakugo tried to let loose some explosions, but between his hands being burned from his attack and his blood diluted, I watched my own father get murdered by a pro hero. Hanako met Bakugo's people like you are what's wrong with this fucking. Hanako screamed at the top of her lungs. Everyone. Hanako collapsed. The tension cleared as the spider girl slipped. I think she's out cold. Endeavor spoke up after a few moments. She had to have been running on pure adrenaline. Mirko, no. Hawk sent a few feathers towards Stain. He's dead. No, first I wasn't trying to kill him. I was only trying to shut him up. Bakugo tried to defend. Young man, Toshinori said bitterly. It doesn't matter if it was accidental or not. The point is you just killed someone. Put your hands behind your back, young Bakugo. Once the police arrive, you'll be placed in a nearby apartment. A young man who had recorded the whole event ran over to his computer and got to work uploading the 10x ultra high ends, you say. All for one mused. Tamura could be heard throwing a tantrum in one of the nearby rooms about how his Hasa plan went so far off the rails. I may only be able to make a few of them, but if we can get more fighters on par with Giganimation, the heroes won't stand a chance. Very well. I'll support it. In fact, I think I may already know someone who can be used as a base for one. You see, I was contacted by an A-class villain stationed in the UK Radigan. What do you know about the hero Ninetales? Ninetales? Not much, my lord. I know she was born in Japan and left for the UK a few years after her debut. She's strong, but I don't think she'd make a good base for an ultra-high end. But she wasn't the one I was referring to. All for one grinned maliciously. There's a reason why Ninetales left Japan so abruptly, and that's because the hero's Public Safety Commission had taken an interest in her daughter's powerful quirk. A couple of hours ago, a video popped up online showcasing a group of students and pro heroes fighting the hero killer. Afterwards, the subdued serial killer had called out one of the students for his reckless and arrogant actions. Said student lost his temper and launched what had ended up being a lethal attack at the hero killer, with another student, the one who had beat the hero killer, caught in the crossfire, only for girl with spider mutations, who had apparently been assisting the hero killer until recently to save the student. Shuichi Agachi watched as the girl, Hanako Yumara, viciously called out the boy as well as society as a whole for their biased discrimination. Despite attempts to remove the video, It had already gained massive traction, many people even citing the sports festival as additional reasoning why society needed to change, and through it all, the HPSC remained silent. A quick search revealed that Anako Yumara had been arrested, though there were complaints from several of the heroes present regarding how the police had roughly handled the girl. Shuichi took a deep breath. No more, he said, standing as he prepared to act. No more. Society won't change unless we start fighting for it. His hand shot towards the keyboard, so let's start fighting. Chapter 65. Achako slowly blinked awake, her side aching as she stared up at the hospital ceiling. She could hear the TV playing in the background. Something shuffled next to her, and Achako turned to see AI blinking sleepily as if she had just woken up herself. I'm sorry. Don't apologize, AI. Achako reassured. She looked around, noticing Uri watching TV. So, what's Uri watching? I think it's called Oshinoko. I think it's some idle slice of life anime, so it should be fine. You're awake? Both girls turned as Principal Nedzu walked in, accompanied by a large man with a beagle's head. This is Police Chief Kenji Tsuragami. He wishes to speak to you regarding the matters in Hasu. Achako stiffened. Calm down now. You're not in any sort of trouble, young lady. Woof. Marco already explained to me how she had given you clearance to fight and use your quirk. She's quite proud of you, actually. Since you're a minor, though, I would have given you the choice of taking credit for the defeat of the hero killer now, or wait until you were fully licensed pro to do so, as while Hawks and Ingenium did provide assistance, you were evidently the main combatant against Stain, and even fealty the finishing blow. Unfortunately, that's no longer possible. He held up his phone, showing a video of Achako fighting Stain. As it turns out, there was a civilian in a nearby building filming your battle. Said video has already gone viral despite attempts to remove, so now the hero student, Uravity, is known as the one who defeated the hero killer. Woof, I see. Achako murmured. For what it's worth, though, you have my sincerest gratitude, young lady. He bowed respectfully before turning to leave with Nedzu. Wait. Principal, yes, you're Araka-san. Nedzu hummed. It's just. Is there anything you might be able to do for Yumara-san? There was silence as Nedzu tilted his head curiously. Hanako Yumara is currently being charged with assisting the hero killer and has admitted to having killed more than a few people herself. You realize that, right? I know that. And I'm not trying to defend her actions, but I could see how much she was hurting. Society pushed her down this path. She's a child. She needs help, not a cell in Tartarus. If there's even the smallest chance we can help Yumara-san heal, then shouldn't the heroes be taking that chance? There was silence. Then Nedzu smiled. I see. You care about your friend dearly in spite of her actions. I can't promise anything, but I'll see what I can do. He bowed, the fall of the chief. And congratulations on your power-up. I haven't informed Azawa of it, though. That's up to you to do. There was silence. First, I tried to call Izuku. AI spoke up quietly. But apparently he's really busy. I wasn't able to tell him anything. It's fine, AA. Achako soothed. Then her phone rang. Achako looked at the caller ID, then went pale. She answered. Hi, Daddy. You haven't been watching the news, have you? At the TV, Uri watched as AI Hashino was fatally stabbed. Phantom pain sucked. Kirishima sighed. Most of his body was in a cast, so the nurse had to prop him up as Nedzu walked in and introduced Chief Tsuragami. I'll get straight to the point. Woof. You deliberately disobeyed Ueda's ban on students being in Hasu City, something that Achako, Uraraka, and Katsuki Bakugo at least have a viable excuse for, and you hunted down the hero killer with the intention of committing vigilantism. Only Achako Uraraka had been given explicit permission to engage with villains. Given you're a child, I would have given you the opportunity to avoid punishment by omitting your involvement in the matters, but that isn't possible since video evidence of you fighting the hero killer has gone viral on the internet. As much as it pains me, you must face punishment for your vigilantism. I have talked with Principal Nedzu, and we came to the agreement that since you've already sustained his eyes flickered toward Kirishima's stump. Serious injuries, that you will not face legal charges, and that he will be the one to decide your punishment. I understand. Kirishima sighed. I was being stupid. I almost died last night, and Bakugo. I'll accept whatever punishment you give me, sir. In that case, when you return to campus, report to Dorm 1C. You are hereby demoted to general education. Do not worry about your things. We will have them moved to your new room before you return. Yes, sir. But I wouldn't say this is the end of your hero career entirely. Should you behave yourself and manage to do well in next year's sports festival, you may be able to reclaim your seat in the hero course. Nezu smiled. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're okay, though. Principal Nezu, sir, there's actually something I need to tell you. I will wait by the car. Sorigami nodded as he left. Yes, young Kirishima. What is it? Nezu asked curiously. Well, there was a little girl in here earlier. She had this teal bonnet and a blue dress. Neju stiffened. Oh, what did she want? Well, she was carrying a bundle of wood. Wood. Yeah, she was saying stuff like how she needed extra organic matter to restore my arm or something along those lines, but he looked at his stump. I turned her down. I feel like if I just let someone restore my arm, it'll be like I'm trying to cover up my mistakes. I see. The thing is, though, she appeared to me before on the train to Hasu. She told me Mina had been healed, but I didn't listen. I can assure you that Ishido-san is indeed up and walking again. Thank you for telling me this, though I ask that you keep this little girl to yourself for the time being. He bowed his head. Good day. Meanwhile, Yeah, sure. Mina can keep attending UA. The pink-skinned woman said brightly. Aizawa blinked. I thought this would be harder. Well, I admit, we're still kind of peeved at the whole campus getting invaded, but we're not going to hold you accountable for something that happened off campus when Mina wasn't even under the teacher's supervision. Besides, she's up and walking again, and the guy who attacked her is dead. And anyway, how's she gonna experience romance at that stuffy-ass shiksu? Aizawa just sighed. Back you go. Neju sighed. I didn't mean to kill him! Exclamation. Bakugo's voice cracked. I know Bakugo. Detective Tsukachi already verified that fact. Unfortunately, it doesn't change the fact that you used overwhelming force against a man who was restrained and harmless at the time, as well as the fact that you endangered the life of your Raka-san. That's not even getting into how you interferes with the fight against the hero killer in the first place, not only endangering yourself and others, but you also deliberately defied Hawk's orders to stand down. Let it be known that while he was not your mentor, he is still the number 3 ranked hero and therefore your superior. All of this was caught on camera and uploaded to the internet, where it has since gone viral. It's Deku's fault. Bakugo wailed. If he had just stayed in his damn place, I would have never had to try and prove my superiority. Bakugo, enough. Your refusal to accept responsibility for your own actions is not helping your case. I regret to inform you, but you will be expelled from UA and sentenced for manslaughter. You can't, Bakugo sobbed. You can't do this to me. You haven't really given me a choice, young man. Your lack of restraint has made you a danger to others. Some officers will arrive shortly to transport you, Nezu said as he got up to leave. Once he was out of the room, he buried his paws in his face. Perhaps it would have been better to not try and help you at all. Hanako couldn't move. Understandable, considering they are bound in restraints made for heteromorphic strength enhancements. The door flew open. Hanako? Hanako. There was silence. Then Hanako looked up, tears in her eyes. First, Hanako broke. I miss Dad. The woman stared at her crying daughter in shock. Then, as she began to cry herself, no touching the woman shot the guard a glare that sent shivers down his spine. Carry on. 10. This is unacceptable. President Mainu huffed. The boy has a powerful quirk and the drive to become a hero. Who cares if he killed a wanted villain? Stuff like this happens all the time. Ma'am, it's all over the internet. Public backlash towards Bakugo is quite high. Irrelevant. We can find some way to shift public opinion back in his favor. A quirk like his is too valuable to rot in a prison cell. See what you can do about getting Bakugo out. Ma'am. A worker called. We just got a report. Bakugo's transport was intercepted. 10th half an. Damn it, what the hell? Bakugo coughed as he dragged himself out of the upturned transport truck. Several of the officers escorted. Hello, Katsuki. Bakugo's head shot up at the tall man in a suit standing before. He wore a disturbing-looking helmet and gave off an aura that, who the fuck are you? My name is irrelevant. All you need to... That's right. All of this was Deku's fault. He's turned society against you, usurped your... The man held out. Join me, Katsuki. Not only can I help you exact revenge on Midoriya, but I can even give you more power than you could ever... You can. Really do that. The man... You needn't worry yourself. Hanako jolted at the sound of screams coming from the officers in the building. Screams of horror and fear that only got louder as the malicious presence got closer and closer to her holding cell. By the time the presence was outside her door, Hanako was shaking. The scream... Then the door flew. Hello, am I a dog? A bear? A mouse? Who cares? I'm the principal of you. Dot. Chapter 66. Sachako sighed as she finished dressing. The hospital had cleared her, and she would be returning with Mirko to finish up her internship. Nedzu said he would try to do something about Yumara's situation, so now all she could do was wait. I wonder how everyone else is doing on their internships. She mused as she grabbed her bag and headed towards the door. 10th, given the situation with Ashido's mentor, Aizawa sighed wearily. I begrudgingly agreed to train her for the rest of her internship alongside you, Hagakure. His eyes flickered to the pink-haired girl. The strange smile she wore since the incident seemed to become more genuine as she conversed with her friend. 10th, AI went to put on some anime for her as she made her lunch. She quickly found what appeared to be a slice of life about a group of girls living in their school as part of a club. Hi, what do you mean my internship contract is now null? Yubami gaped. Ma'am, as you have been told time and time again, hero school internships are not an excuse for free labor. UA's head lawyer spoke in exasperation. X. You're honestly not how I thought you'd be after watching your debut video. Kendo mused. Yeah, the whole sludge villain thing was kind of a sobering experience, my lady replied. Now I really just put on the act for the fans. I'm trying to be better, but I still need to make ends meet, you know. Understandable, Kendo nodded. 10th, Ibara stared at her phone in disgust. Apparently, the girl who was the hero killer's associate was actually a close friend of Uraraka and Midoriya. As far as she knew, this validated her concerns regarding the relationship with AI Hachi. After all, no good person would knowingly associate with a serial. When she returned from internship, she would confront those two and save AI Hachi from them. 10th, so when do I get to meet her? Ray Todoroki asked. Hound Dog had called earlier to tell Shoto he had gotten the all clear to see his mother, and night I was glad to drive Shoto to the hospital. It was an emotional reunion, and it gave Shoto the closure he needed. Who, this girl you were talking about? Yuzumaru. The way you spoke of her, it's clear she's stolen your heart. Shoto blinked in confusion before holding a hand to his chest. I don't know what you're talking about. I can still feel my heart beating in my chest. I don't think I'd even be alive if someone took it. Dear God, Inji, how much did you shelter this kid? Ray thought. Okay then. Before you go, I do have one last question. Yes, that little girl who was sitting in the announcer's booth at the sports festival. Yes, her name's Eri. Eri, right. So is she like Izuku Midoriya's secret love child or something? For the first time in his life, Shoto had found someone who understood him. X. Right, the villain calling himself He Who Walks Behind the Rose has been apprehended along with all of the children over 13 years of age. Star told the police chief. The whole situation had been a nightmare. A man with a quirk that let him control Korn had pretty much indoctrinated an entire small town's population of children into becoming his cult before having them murder all of the other adults in town. What about the children 13 and under? The chief asked. They all just kinda flocked to Deku as soon as he stepped out. Star waved a hand towards Izuku, who was surrounded by a crowd of children. Big brother, please read me a story, a little girl asked. Okay, go ahead and pick out a book. Izuku responded brightly. I want head pats. A boy spoke up. Sure, Izuku answered as he pat the boy's head. Boy just has a way with kids. Star mused. 10th, my new ultimate move. Abyssal Black BGNK. Takayami doubled over as Ona's fist met his sternum. For some reason, she had brought him up to the roof for training today. In the time it took you to shout out your move's name, you could have already used it, she chided, standing up. Most people will act like shouting out the names of moves is good because it gives people a sense of hope, but also acts against you. Not only does it give villains familiar with the move a chance to counter it, it also wastes precious time. A single second can mean the difference between life and death. I see. It's fine to shout it out every once in a while, though. Just make sure you read the situation. She stood up. Her hero costume consisted of a white, sleeveless dress with blue accents that had ankle-length flaps protruding from her waist. Underneath this, she wore a long-sleeved, skin-tight bodysuit woven from tungsten. Currently hanging around her neck was a mouth mask in the shape of a fox's snout. Another thing you should take note of is the names of your moves. Abyssal Black Body is kind of a mouthful. On top of that, I get you're going for the whole dark and edgy aesthetic, but there comes a point when the edginess just turns into straight-up cringe. I will work on the name. Good now then. She pointed to a nearby building at least 3 times as high as the agency. Atop that building's roof is a red bell I planted. I want you to fly up there and get it. Takayami looked at her as if she had just suddenly grew a second head. I apologize if my mutations must have confused you. I am incapable of flight. There was silence. Wrong answer. Ona spoke. 4 large, shadowy arms erupted from her back, 2 on each side. The arms suddenly merged together, forming 2 massive arms. She flapped the giant hands as though they were wings, and, with a massive gust of wind that almost knocked Takayami on his ass, she was flying. Takayami stared up at her in shock and amazement as she ascended in the air, before leveling out a good 20 feet above him. Do you know why I sent you that internship request? She asked. Because you were impressed with my performance at the sports festival. Wrong, I wasn't impressed at all. In fact, your performance in the 3rd round was quite pathetic. Takayami blanched. Ninetale's eyes were cold and calculating, quite unlike her previous demeanor. You forfeited the match as soon as Creative was able to nullify your quirk. You didn't try to fight back, you just gave up. That won't fly in the real world, boy. You know I keep up with the news in Japan. Well, I can say that little performance of yours reminded me of the sludge villain incident. That idiot Death Arm stood around doing nothing, claiming his quirk wasn't suited for the job. He didn't try to negotiate. He didn't try a different tactic that wasn't punching a mound of slime. No, he stood there doing nothing, content to let a child die while he waited for other heroes, and he got rightfully called out on it. You can't just give up the second your quirk becomes ineffective, not when people's lives are at stake. She dropped down, landing on the roof. Our quirks are tools, and tools have more uses than just what's advertised. I could pry something open with a screwdriver. Hell, I once used a pocket knife to pry a bullet out of someone's leg. You need to hone these tools, sharpen them, and use them in ways you didn't think possible, but at the same time, not become overly reliant on them. She pointed to the building. We have 5 days left in this internship. I want you to be able to claim that bell by then, do you? She cut off as her phone began ringing. Or hang on a second. She pulled out her phone and answered. Hello? Are you serious? No, I'm not upset. These things happen. I'll go get Ara. You just focus on getting to the hospital. She hung up with a sigh. My daughter's babysitter twisted her ankle, so I need to leave for a bit. Aren't you a little young for children? Takayami asked. It's complicated. Take a break. I'll be back in a bit. She quickly led him back inside. When they came across the break room, there were 2 other people. One was Lena Rhodes, a high schooler who did work studies with Ninetales. She had their heteromorphic mutations gave her the appearance of a 5-foot humanoid bat, with her arms having wing membranes attached. She had short, blonde hair and wore a pair of glasses. The other was a woman he hadn't met before, who basically reminded Takayami of a vampire with her pale skin, fangs, and dark hair. I'm Hitomi. Perfect timing, Ona said. This is Hitomi Jido, head of intelligence and resident Hikikomori. You haven't met her yet, cause she rarely leaves her office. Alina introduced them. I need to leave for a bit. With that, she rushed out, leaving the 3. Right, Alina began. This is. Hitomi tried to leave. Alina grabbed her collar. Someone who can't socialize to save her life. One person was already enough. Two is too many, Hitomi mumbled as she shook out of Alina's grip and quickly left the break room. From what I understand, Hitomi was one of Mrs. Ona's first workers when she opened her agency back in Japan, Alina explained, and one of the few who followed her when she transferred her agency here. Her office was actually converted into a kind of apartments and she leaves it so rarely the new hires have no idea who she is. Anyway, she turned back to the stove. Fancy a cup of tea? I'm making some now. Thank you, I would be delighted. Takoyami said respectfully. Tenth, you would do well to not overstep your boundaries, Ratigan. A figure wearing a full-body cloak and a gas mask that invoked the appearance of an owl sneered down towards the large humanoid rat man. Consider yourself lucky even one of the Council of Owls has agreed to meet you. Why, yes, of course. I meant no disrespect, Ratigan said hastily. The Clockwork Court, a shadowy organization operating within the UK, that was said to be as dangerous as Japan's Metal Liberation Army or even the anti-quirk cult Humorize, an S-rank organization that was practically a ghost with its exact number of members and its end goal completely unknown. Its leadership was known as the Council of Owls. What little information people could gather suggested the council had 6 members. While their identities were unknown, the Heroes' Parliament had declared the entirety of the Council of Owls would be labeled as S-rank villains. Such was the organization's scope. Now then, the figure's body briefly sparked as bits and pieces of metal from around the area suddenly began hovering around Ratigan threateningly. Quite wasting my time, and tell me what's so important you needed to get into contact with an organization far above you. The Bogeman who takes quirks. The figure paused. What does All for One have to do with this? He made a request of me, one that I doubt my syndicate could manage on its own. I've reached out to other villains, Mandy's and Lady Death to name a few. If we all team up, we can pull this off and maybe get in his good graces. And what exactly is it that All for One desires? He wants Ninetail's daughter to be delivered to him by the end of the week. MS Flamhammer. Basil, the UK's number 2 hero called Flaversham. The young woman shouted back. I need you to put out a meeting request for several other agencies. I have a feeling things are about to get very hectic soon.
Yeah, if he's like, baby.